anything other than to help this country get back where it's at, and we are going the opposite direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
I joined this filibuster because history needs to demonstrate that someone actually cares about the deficit. The deficits do matter. We have a $28 trillion deficit. There's probably no agency in government more wasteful than the National Science Foundation. This bill increases the budget by 68%. This is the agency that funds studying the male mating call of Panamanian frogs to see if the country frogs have a different mating call than the city frogs. This is the agency that funds whether or not we should study whether humans should eat ants to slow down the warming of the planet. Whether or not sitting in a hot tub makes you less stressful. Whether or not or why people go gray during times of stress. Ridiculous and crazy stuff that no American would vote for. If the American people knew that we were increasing the budget by 68% of an agency that does this kind of ridiculous research, studying whether or not Japanese quail are more sexually promiscuous on cocaine, that's the kind of stuff your federal government's spending money on. The American people would be alarmed and would rebel if they knew. It's disappointing that many of my Republican colleagues will vote for this. I'm standing with those who do care about the deficit. We will continue to fight, and I think we are making inroads. Thank you, and we'll take a few questions.
Senators, do you plan to use the full 30 hours both here and then after the next cloture vote?
So I can announce that there is a hotline on a deal to delay the vote on this package until we come back after recess and move forward with the January 6th commission vote and some nominations. So if nobody objects to that, we're not going to object. Again, it'll give us time and our constituents time to take a look at this. So when we finally cast our vote, it's going to be more informed.
But I mean, the Democrats, of course, are not going to agree to that. They're going to object to that. So assuming they object to that,
this has actually been a discussion, and they wrote up what the offer is, and we believe we accepted it. Now it's just a matter of whether anybody's going to object.
Senator, I've seen the hotline. You wouldn't get any additional amendments. There would be no further uptake in the amendment bill. What do you accomplish by delaying the vote?
Again, we'll be able to hear from our constituents, which is what Senator Scott asked last night. Let us go home. Let us talk to constituents so that we're informed when we actually cast our vote. Do you not understand this process, how you just get dumped on you hundreds of pages of complex legislative text and you expect to just say yay or nay? I mean, if that's what regular order is and that's what they're calling regular order, you understand how incredibly broken this place is and why our children, your futures, are being mortgaged as we speak.
Senator, are any of you planning to considering voting for this bill? Why should the managers of this bill accept their amendments if they're not going to vote for the final bill?
Well, the reason we got up and started speaking is to utilize the full debate time. Now, if people don't want to work on a Friday or into a Saturday, they say, okay, if you want a little bit more time, we'll make an offer and let you come back and we'll vote on this a week from now.
I understand,
and we'll be fine with that.
But Senator, you've made clear that you think this whole bill is bad. It spends too much money. You're going to vote against it.
It's important.
So why should the leaders take your amendment?
It's important that the public understands what's in this bill. And if we would have just voted and passed this yesterday, it'd be yesterday's news, and we'd be moving on to the next spending boondoggle, the 1.7 trillion. This is $2.25 trillion.
The Senate worked its will here.
This isn't a debate about accepting amendments. This is a debate about a despicable waste of money. It's a debate about the debt and whether everybody cares. No Democrats give a fig about the deficit. They're honest. They believe in new monetary policy, spend whatever it takes, borrow whatever it takes. Our side, most of them say they care, but there's only a few of us who are willing to say, no, we're not voting for more wasteful spending to one of the most wasteful agencies in government. That's what this is about. It's not about an amendment here or there. This is about wasteful spending, whether you care about the deficit. We do. We're going to tell our people at home about it. And I guarantee if you did a poll of Republican voters, 90% of them were with us. And these people would be embarrassed, and that's the point. We're going to take this to the American people, and then they can say, explain yourself where you come from. So
just to clarify your intention.
Hold on, Alex.
Just to clarify, the deal is to run a January 6th commission today, two judges today, and then do the cloture vote and final vote after the recess. Would that entail any amendments as well, or just
I don't think so, no.
And it,
same process?
Right.
and if someone objects to this UC request, will you let will you yield back the rest of your debate
I
time?
think we're here through the weekend.
You think you're here through the
So
weekend?
we've offered, I think this is us actually being conciliatory, I think it'll be accepted, but if it's not offered, it's not accepted. I think we've shown that we're willing to stand up for things we believe in.
Senator Paul, you say this is about a debate about the deficit, but some of your senators in this group and Senator Kennedy have been complaining about the process and regular order. This is the most amendments we have seen on a piece of legislation in years. So how can you complain about the process when it has been a relatively very open process with Republicans getting a vast majority of amendments?
For me, it's supposed to be about the debt. Everybody else has to speak for themselves. But there's problems with getting hundreds of pages. You know, there was one of the amendments in the manager's package that was given to the desk at 6 o'clock last night. And it's a significant piece of legislation on our foreign policy, and that's just not the way you should pass.
But you guys
legislation.
voted on these amendments, though.
But by the way, listen, we're concerned about all of the above. The deficit, the deficit spending, the debt. The fact that, okay, it was better regular order than we've had, but it's not even close to adequate. Again, I ticked through a number of amendments that passed my committee unanimously, weren't even considered in this process because, in this regular order process, there's just a couple of people that matter. The rest of us are pretty well shut out. They think that, well, if you get one amendment vote, you ought to be satisfied, although many of my colleagues have dozens of amendments, never even get considered. So this place is so far broken that just unbreaking it a little bit isn't particularly satisfying. But the reason we're in such enormous levels of debt and deficit spending is because how broken this place is, and we just rush through all this stuff, pass it, and move on to the next deficit spending boondoggle.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions, then we need to wrap.
I'd like to say one thing. I'll ask you, do you want to spend your taxpayer money for the next 10 years on building semiconductors in this country and roll the dice? Can we get it done? Because that's what's happening. We need semiconductors in the worst way. Most of them are made out of this country. Are we doing it the right way? Folks, we're spending your money. Do you rush into starting a business before you know what's going on? And we're all for, technology and doing things to help us in the military. But you don't build a business like this, just throwing it out there and say, we think we can get it done. Think, with $50 billion, you better get it done for your sake.
Senators, are you concerned, building on Leanne's point, like she said, there's been more amendments on this bill. I can't remember the last time that a bill has been on the floor for 2 weeks. It's been a long time. Are you concerned that next time there is a big bill that's coming down the pike, the leaders, with you guys having engaged in these tactics, simply aren't going to even go through this much process?
This is not
going to be
tactics,
another.
this is what we believe in.
You're engaging in tactics. Senator Paul just said you're engaging in a tactic.
I am doing this because I'm sick and tired of this debt. When I was governor of Florida, I walked in with a budget deficit. I paid off a third of the state debt. We cannot keep doing this. There is no way this lasts. Look at the inflation numbers. They came out today. Look at the inflation numbers that came out today. Look at PPI. Look at CPI. Look at the core PPI numbers. They're horrible. It's hurting families like mine growing up. When people couldn't afford to go to the grocery store because inflation was so bad. I'm going to keep fighting to make sure this money gets spent better. I think it's important that everybody in the public knows exactly what's in this bill, and this process didn't do that.
We're fighting.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.